What the heck is going on, everyone? Today we're going to go over 3 common mistakes in Black Ops 6 ranked play that are probably making you lose your gunfights. And if this video ends up helping you out, be sure to let me know by liking and subscribing. And if so, I'll definitely keep doing videos like these in the future. And in terms of aiming, I've already gone over most of the basics on my channel, so if you don't feel confident in your sensitivity or any other aim settings, check out the video on screen now. And I'll scroll through my controller settings really quick if you don't know where to start, with here being my dead zones, the rest of my aiming settings, and then really quickly through movement. But I wanted to go over some more advanced reasons why your aim might be failing you in Black Ops 6, especially if you are somebody that makes one of these 3 mistakes. And mistake number 1 is that you're doing too much. There are so many of you that actually have good aim, but the problem is every other aspect of your gameplay is making it harder for you to show your true potential. We're going to break this mistake further down into 3 different categories. And the first of these is that you're using too much movement. Unnecessary movements like panic jumps and jump shots or drop shotting when you don't need to are all making it more difficult for you to aim. Even jump sliding, which is a common way to challenge around angles, you can see how much that messes with the aim as you first hit the ground. Don't get me wrong, there is a time and a place to use a long slide after jumping, but let's say that you're challenging somebody here. Ideally, you would jump slide beforehand so that by the time you're actually able to see your opponent, your gun is up and ready to be aimed rather than challenging them while the gun is at its lowest point. If you're up close like I was right there, it won't matter too much. But like I said, if you're trying to challenge somebody that's maybe further back on this head glitch, you want to make sure that you've already jumped and landed your slide by the time your gun will be up and ready to challenge that angle. If you do a movement mechanic like this too early, when you're shooting them, your gun is going to go down lower than you think. Same thing with diving too. It's really not a movement mechanic that you want to use too much. Diving is definitely a better mechanic to use reactively. Like let's say you get somebody weak and have the information, rather than proactively dive around a corner when you're not necessarily sure that anybody's there. The reason that is because again, you're doing too much with your movement. You get stuck on the ground afterwards, your gun is bobbing a ton, and you're really not going to finish too many kills mid-dive unless you already have them weak or have the information that they're at a certain angle or something like that. So in order to stop doing too much with your movement, you need to have specific intent with your movements. Why are you sliding around a corner? Why are you deciding to jump over a certain angle? Or are you just doing these things because you feel like it? As you're going about each map and playing each game, make sure to keep in the back of your mind the intent as to why you're doing what you're doing. Make your movement make sense in the context of the game, and make sure that you're not just mashing buttons because you can. What I don't want this tip to mean is to move less, because that's definitely not the case. But I've talked about this tip in previous videos, and the one part about it that I struggle the most with is that whenever I'm playing against a team that I'm nervous to play against, or a game that I think that I'm going to lose, my instinct is to jump way more than I should in gunfights. And I know that that messes up my aim, but for whatever reason, I can't stop doing it. So that's something that I've worked on a ton, keeping my feet on the ground when they're meant to be on the ground, and making sure that the movements that I'm doing are the movements that I'm wanting to be doing, rather than just spamming buttons because I'm either nervous or because of other sort of reactions that are going on in the game. And the next aspect of doing too much that I wanted to talk about is actually in regards to not enough game sense. What I mean by that is if you're sprinting too much or getting caught doing slower motions too much because you don't have a grasp on the game, that's going to slow down your sprint to fire time, and you'll have to react to what's going on in front of you rather than being more proactive about it. Good news is you can work on this mid-game, as every time that you get caught sprinting or doing any sort of motion that's not helping you towards a gunfight, you can tie that into the back of your mind and remind yourself that, hey, every single time that I challenge top you, I'm sprinting into it rather than keeping my gun up or sliding and ADSing into it. And that's what's gotten me killed a couple times. So every time that I see this hallway from here on out, I need to make sure that I'm proactive about ADSing and rounding the corner. An example from my gameplay is a lot of times rotating from P1 to P2. If I'm breaking bottom secret, I'm usually not expecting people to be actually playing secret or even lobby watching to bottom secret. So it's not uncommon that I get caught sprinting right here at this angle. And it's something that I've tried incorporating more into my gameplay to either kind of shoulder this and see if they're holding it, or trying to hug right and slide across to the left corner before working into the lobby. So yes, this very much has to do with movement and how it relates to your game sense, but all this put together will put you at less of a disadvantage in your gunfights during Black Ops 6 ranked play. The last aspect that I want to go over today in terms of doing too much does not have to do with your movement, but does have to do with your game sense, and it's your centering. Centering is something that's been gone over multiple times in multiple different videos, my own included. And that's because of how important it is, especially in a first-person shooter like Black Ops 6. Now, if you have bad game sense and bad centering, you're not going to know where to look, and you're going to round corners and have to do more in terms of actually getting your aim on target. If I round this corner with bad centering or bot centering where people are looking at the floor, when I finally do catch a target, there's a bunch of adjustments that I need to make before I'm actually getting onto the target that I'm trying to shoot. So if I run around with bad centering, this is of course an extreme example. I hope most of you aren't running around the map like that. You're making it way more difficult for yourself because you're having to factor in the time it takes to actually get onto the target you're looking to shoot. And every time I talk about centering, I like to mention that it's something that can be worked on every single second of every single game. If you go into your interface settings and scroll down to crosshair and turn it on static, your crosshair is going to remain in the same spot the entire time. It won't bob and sway around the center of your screen, and you don't even need bots in your lobby to practice your centering. Even on the fountain heady in P1, constantly adjusting and making sure that your center dot is at where an opponent would be is just one example of why it's super important and how you can be working on your centering as you traverse through the map. Now, of course, it's not perfect. Somebody could be laying down around this corner holding P1 instead of behind the head glitch, but this is just a general idea of how to center across the map and how you can incorporate it into your gameplay. And aiming mistake number 2 that could be a huge reason why you're not winning gunfights is that you're not practicing right, and you might not be warming up right either. There is a huge difference between spawning in and shooting your gun and actual deliberate practice that's going to translate into in-game performance. If you spawn in as your warm-up and turn your brain off and shoot a bunch of bots, that's great. Yes, you'll be improving some of your muscle memory, but you're not actually helping yourself get any better. If you're somebody that's looking to improve in COD and aim is one of the things that you want to improve on, you need to make sure that's what you're actually practicing. Another video I was watching made a great analogy, and it was of somebody preparing for a spelling bee. If all that somebody did to prepare for a spelling bee was just read a book, they wouldn't get any better and they wouldn't perform any better in the actual spelling bee. It takes deliberate practice to actually see improvements and make improvements that are going to help you out in the long run. This relates to Call of Duty exactly with what I was saying earlier. When you spawn in against bots, don't just spawn in, turn off your brain and shoot. What you need to be doing is finding the center mass of the target and not missing a single shot. Keep in mind this is very different than spawning into an actual ranked play game, as sometimes in ranked it's more important to just send shots downfield. But when we're in a bot lobby working on our aim, you need to make sure that you're completely lined up and that your recoil is as greatly controlled as possible before taking the shot. The reason we're doing this is because we're here to improve our aim and we're building habits that are going to last into the actual ranked play lobbies. And this does keep in mind all of the previous tips that we were talking about earlier, or mistakes that we were talking about earlier, with making sure you're not doing too much movement, making sure that your centering is good as you're going across the map, and trying to have some game sense going into it. It's important to always be thinking about where your opponents are going to be coming from and where they're going to be up next. Recoil control is a great part of this, but realistically it's not something that can be worked on. Like, there's no special tricks for it other than just muscle memory and playing the game. If you're completely whiffing shots, I mean, the most important part is having a left stick max dead zone that's a little bit lower, like 70, and ensuring that whenever you're shooting your gun, you're strafing just so you get the maximum amount of aim assist that you can. But you want to have enough muscle memory for recoil control that even if you let go of your left stick, you should be able to shoot straight. Really all that it is pulling down, especially on the first couple shots. The longer that you shoot, the more horizontal the recoil is going to get. And a lot of that is not really something that you teach, it's just something that you feel over time. And the third reason why you're not winning your gunfights in Black Ops 6 is that you're not making adjustments. You need to be taking note of which gunfights are common for you to win and which ones are common for you to lose, and adjust accordingly. There's a reason why when you run into the lobby, you're often losing the gunfight from the person top stairs. And there's a reason why when you're behind Lambo, you're able to win the gunfights of the people that are pushing rock. And yes, positioning is of course a part of that, but so is confidence, and so is the way that you're challenging these angles. So if there's a gunfight that you commonly win, you're doing something right. And if there's one that you commonly lose, there's some room for improvement. So for me, the one that I mentioned earlier, pushing into lobby, this is one that I commonly lose, especially if somebody's playing on top of the stairs. For whatever reason, I feel like I don't get aim assist through the railings, and that's something that I've been struggling with for a while. And what I've tried to do to counter this recently is sliding across from side to side, getting the information of where the opponents are going to be. Of course, if you're playing like Control or something and see nothing at all, you need to shoulder your left and your right corners because a lot of people can play here. But if I do see somebody, instead of just blindly running at them or taking the gunfight, assuming there's enough time in the round, I'll actually wrap around to the outside and kind of reevaluate the situation from here. The good thing about Call of Duty multiplayer is that as big as these maps might seem, and as many crazy places you can find people, a lot of these gunfights are going to be in the exact same spots, just with a different person that you're shooting against. So of course the common denominator in those is you. So change how you're approaching the gunfights that you're not winning very commonly. Another more mid gunfight adjustment that we need to talk about is knowing when to go from ADSing to hip firing. And I've talked about this for a while, especially in Black Ops 6, is that with how crazy the movement is, like how somebody can slide all the way across your screen, slide backwards, slide left, slide right, dive to the right, you should know when it's time to hip fire and just kind of let luck or RNG take the rest of the way. So it makes the most sense to ADS whenever you can, especially at mid to long ranges. But if you catch somebody up close or are not sure where they're coming from, don't be afraid to transition from that ADS to a hip fire if somebody's like sliding down these stairs. In terms of adjusting for your aim, especially longer range and on head glitches, as you're tracking somebody, you want to try to track them with your left stick rather than your right. This tip is mainly for AR players that might be trying to challenge people on head glitches. You should let your right stick do the work for controlling the recoil and let your left stick do the work in terms of actually placing your aim where your opponents are, especially if they're strafing. You'll have to make some adjustments with your right stick, especially in the closer range gunfights, but keeping in mind the importance of left stick aiming with tracking opponents is huge for being able to beam people off head glitches. Take this car, for example. If somebody was head glitching the car and they moved to the left, making a small adjustment to the left while I'm not shooting is really not that hard. But if you factor in having to pull down and control the recoil and then move to the left, it's really difficult to actually try to do that. And this is probably the best example as to why strafing is the best way to keep track of your opponents. Not only are you getting the rotational aim assist that you get with moving left, you're not having to make the adjustments with your right stick. Rather, you're just moving your body to move where your opponent is. So instead, right here, I'm going to control the recoil only with my right stick and then strafe to the left. And that obviously wasn't perfect, but I had a much better shot of keeping up with somebody doing this rather than strictly using my right stick and staying still to move my aim to the left. And those are 3 common aiming mistakes that you might be making at Black Ops 6 ranked play, as well as how to win more gunfights. I hope you all enjoyed this video. Like and subscribe if you did, and I'll catch you next time at lunchtime.